Should you correct your child's mistakes when reading? Stick around for the answer. Hi, I'm Rebecca with the Parent Teacher Bridge, where you can find the ideas and resources you need to empower you to become your child's most influential teacher. And today I'm talking about should you correct your child's reading mistakes? And if so, how do you go about that? Before I begin, click like and subscribe, and please drop a comment below with any questions or concerns you have along the way. When a child has errors in their reading, it's going to affect their overall comprehension of what they're reading, but it's also going to affect their enjoyment of reading. If something is very difficult, they're not going to want to do it. If it doesn't make a lot of sense, they're not going to want to do it. So that is the why. Yes, you should correct mistakes when your child is reading. But secondly, how should you go about doing that? Now, you don't want to interrupt your child's flow of reading and you don't want to create a lot of negativity. So, how is the best way to fix these errors and address these errors so that your child can actually improve? Before we begin that, let's go over just a few of some common errors that children make in their reading. Skipping a word, mispronouncing a word, substituting one word for another word, dropping a suffix or adding a suffix, paying no attention to punctuations, periods, question marks, exclamation points. Now, these are some of the most common errors that I see when I have my tutoring students come and read with me. So, up to a certain point, all of these errors are considered normal, but you don't want your child to continue in them. So, let's go over some of the things you can do to minimize these types of mistakes. Number one, gently tap your finger on the page where the error occurred. Now, this requires really nothing verbal from you. You're just tapping right there. It's a subtle reminder that your child needs to go back to that spot and see if there's something that they didn't notice, see if there's something they didn't pay attention to. And the reason why I like to do this first is that it may just be the child wasn't paying attention, the child is tired, the child's not into the story, but really they could actually read that word. Really, they can get by without skipping a word or whatever the error was. Because if they are able to self correct without me saying anything, that lets me know that they really are able to do it. Now, a lot of the time, that's all it takes. I have met with some tutoring students for the very first time sometimes, and I've just done that, and the child is able to clean up their reading just by paying more attention and knowing that someone is going to hold them accountable. Number two, you can repeat back verbatim what the child just read. So let's say your child is reading a longer page. You may want to wait until the end of the page and then go back to the specific sentence where they messed up. Maybe they mispronounced a word, maybe they omitted a word, and you read that sentence exactly how they read it so that they can hear you read it, so that they can notice, something just isn't making sense here. That's what we do as adults. So we're going to occasionally make some of these same errors as adults when we read, but much of the time we are able to self correct without anyone else watching us read these passages or articles or whatever it is that we are reading. So you want your child to be trained to listen to themselves and think about what they are reading when they are reading. And one way that I do that is to repeat back exactly what they said and see if they notice that it doesn't make sense. A lot of times they are able to. Number three, I direct the child to notice the actual letters and syllables within the word. So if a child was adding a sound that's really not in the word, or if a child was leaving something out or dropping a suffix at the end, I point that out and I let the child try that word one more time while they're paying closer attention to the letters that are there in the word, or the spelling pattern, or the syllables that are in the word, especially if we have already studied syllable types together. Now, if you are interested in syllable types, I have a free download. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Some of the things that you may point out are things like consonant blends, or digraphs, or specific suffixes that you have found, vowel teams, and things like that. So if you'd like to know more about that, you can look some of that up on your own. Also, I have a course, A Busy Mom's Guide to Teaching Your Child How to Read. You can look into that if you like. And my second course is coming out soon. It is called Next Step Reading, and it's going to cover those things like syllable types and vowel teams. If you would like to know more about that, be sure to get on my email list. Now, in the case of suffixes, if a child is unable to read a particular word, I may give them a hint. This word has a suffix, or we might nickname it a tail. Now, I got this idea from a Nessie reading video. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But it basically talks about words that have a head, body, and tail. The head, they refer to the prefix sometimes, and the body is the base word. The tail is the suffix. So I may remind them there's a tail on this word, there's a suffix on this word. Once they are able to see the suffix and like hide it with their thumb, take it away, then they could just focus on what the base word is and add the suffix back on to be able to read the longer word. Now, something interesting that I've tried on my own in my tutoring sessions is called the post it note method. And that is where I keep a stack of post it notes handy so that if there is a word that a child is having a struggle with sounding out, instead of just vaguely saying, sound it out, I can coach them through the process of looking at the syllable types and understanding how to sound out each chunk of the word. So I don't have to write in the book. If it's a library book, that's fine. If it's the child's book from school, that's fine too. And I write the word down on the post it note and we scoop the syllables. I might even make some markings to code the word, whether or not it has a long or short vowel, whether or not the syllable is open or closed, or some other syllable type. And this is something that I might explicitly teach my students for part of the tutoring time. And then the rest of the tutoring time, we actually pull real books off the bookshelf and we start applying those rules that we've learned. The post-it note method is just a way where that post-it note is going to stay on that page. It has the word on it. It has the way that we have marked the word and coded the word so that when the child is reading independently and they're going back and rereading, they can be reminded of how we pronounced that word. Number 4, I might give a child an index card to track their print. Now, think about this as adults. When we read something difficult, we might have to actually move our finger along. Think instructions on how to put a washing machine back together. Something maybe you've done that's very practical around the house. You might use your finger to track your print. Well, you can direct your child to do that also. And there are different ways of tracking one's print. You can use a finger, a marker, but sometimes I give them an index card. That way they only see that one line and they can gradually move the index card downward as they are reading. And it can also be done with a bookmark if you have a child reading a chapter book or something like that. And it keeps them focused to keep going on. They just move it down each and every time. And number 5, I model the reading and I have the child imitate. So let's think about a child who is not paying attention to punctuation. Maybe they're not reading a sentence as a question when it has a question mark. Maybe they're reading the text till they get to the end of a line and they stop at the end of the line, even though there's not any end mark. And so they're not really making natural breaks where the end marks are. I read the passage the wrong way so they can hear it the wrong way. It doesn't make sense. And I show them this doesn't make sense if I'm reading this and I'm stopping right here. So that would be showing a child the wrong way, a non example. And then you're going to want to show your child the right way. And you say, listen to it when I read it this way. And then I read it the correct way. And I pause at the periods, not pausing at the end of the line. Now, let me encourage you to pay attention also to small words. Sometimes children mess up on small words and parents don't think they need to address that. So pay attention to that. Have that little mini lesson or mini conversation with your child that this matters. Did you say that word when you were reading this sentence? And point that out and help them be aware of it. Usually, if they're aware of it and they know someone's holding them accountable, they will improve. Now, if you find that your child is making too many of these errors on a page, and too many is probably going to be like 3 or more per page. And I know page size varies if you're talking about a picture book versus a chapter book. But if your child is making too many, that's a hint that this book is probably a little bit too difficult of a reading level for your child to be reading independently. And it may be a good option as a book that you read aloud to your child, or maybe even that you read with your child, like you read a page, I read a page. But as far as them reading independently without reading aloud to anybody, it's probably a little bit too difficult. So use it in another way or save it for later. Back up to some other book that's an easier level where they're not making so many mistakes on each page. This is going to improve your child's fluency, and it's also going to improve your child's comprehension. Now, if you've done all of these ideas and none of this seems new to you and your child is still struggling, you may want to just think very simple here and have their eyes checked. You never know. I recently spoke with a parent who was unaware that this was an issue until she had her child just tested, and that was something they found on the test. And since she addressed it, her child has actually been improving in her reading. So you may want to think very simple and check out something like that. Let me remind you, be sure to make a comment below. This could be a question. If you need to write something longer to me, you can email me, Rebecca@theparentteacherbridge.com. I respond to every email. And be sure to check out the links in the description below. Remember, parents, you are your child's most influential teacher.